Bonjour. I'm afraid that's the end of my French today, and I'm very sorry about that, particularly considering I am from a company called Provenance, which is a French word. If you would like a headset, I think there are some circulating around. Don't be shy to grab one. I'm being nicely translated for you real time. So today, I am going to give you an application of how blockchain technology can be applied in the food system. I'll give you an overview of what we're doing at Provenance, a bit about the problem we're specifically solving and how we're solving it. And then I'm going to dive into a case study, looking specifically at how blockchain technology can be applied in traceability in the fishing industry. I'm sorry, this isn't actually an agricultural example. At the moment, we are working with a supermarket in the UK on fresh produce, but this is unfortunately not live yet. But I think you'll be able to see the analogy through the example in the fishing industry of how this could be applied to many different food systems. I'll then finish the talk by talking a little bit about some of the things that have arisen as we've been working in the food industry, applying blockchain, and some of the challenges we're facing, and indeed some of the exciting opportunities we're seeing for the future of this technology. So let's start specifically with the problem that Provenance is trying to solve. We are a business. We're a business with a mission that's very much based on social impact. And really what we're trying to do is to help retailers and brands in the food and drinks industry make their supply chains more transparent. Why? Because there is a huge risk associated with not knowing where the ingredients going into your food comes from. There can be a health risk, but also a risk to us morally as consumers, when we would rather try and buy something that perhaps doesn't involve a huge amount of environmental degradation or a compromise of well-being of animals or humans. At Provenance, we are dedicated to trying to help us all make more informed decisions when it comes to the buying of food. So how do we do that? We have created a platform that businesses can use in order to open up information about their products. This could be just generally about a type of product. So for example, a specific bottle of wine, who created it? Is it organic? What region of France was it produced in? But increasingly, we're also helping to track batches of, for example, bottles of wine through a supply chain. So forming a very robust chain of custody in real time so that people can understand where products are coming from. And indeed, to do this, we are using new technologies. One is we are a mobile-first application and very much designed for helping gather data and transfer that data phone to phone. We also make use of open data sets, so pulling information about our food systems that's already perhaps public elsewhere on the internet into a system where it can be used in this context. But also, of course, we're using blockchain technology in order to be able to track the key claims relating to products, materials and ingredients, as well as finished products on a public blockchain. So a bit more about what that kind of looks like. This is a recent project we did in the wine industry. And this, from a tag on the bottle of wine, it can either be a smart NFC tag or just simply a unique ID. You can access the real-time information about where that bottle of wine came from, the key people that were involved in its creation, and their key verified claims. So that could be a certification to say this product is safe, or a certification to say it came from a certain region. You can imagine there are many different certifications that we're tracking using this technology. A bit more about our key users. So sort of 3 steps in the chain that are very important to how Provenance works. One is the supplier, so that could be a farmer in the field. It's very important that we gather data from as far up the chain as we possibly can. We then feed that information along the supply chain. So for example, these 3 steps, supplier, retailer, and consumer. However, you'll see with our example in the fishing industry, this can be a lot more than 3 steps. In the fishing industry, we worked tracking fish and their key claims along as many as 14 different transactions inside one country. So where are we at the moment? So we are a business, and we started 2 years ago now. And we've slowly started to attract several food and drinks brands to use our technology in order to be able to validate the provenance of their products. Initially, this was many startup brands, so smaller food businesses where provenance was a very key part of their offer. Particularly smaller businesses where their product was made and the way in which it was made is a key part of the premium being charged for that product. However, over time, we've also managed to attract some much larger businesses, and we're now in the midst of a project with the Co-op supermarket in the UK, the fifth largest supermarket. So let me talk you through a case study, looking practically at how we can use blockchains in a supply chain context in the food industry. So just to talk specifically about the challenge we're tackling here in seafood, a huge problem is that seafood has social and environmental issues. The way a fish is caught can vary so hugely in terms of sustainability, from being something that can provide fantastic jobs and welfare and support to a community, and even enhance the environment, to the complete opposite side, where we have slavery and we have fishing vessels that are destroying the environment. However, in many industries, when a fish is sold, every fish is sustainable. Every fish is being caught in a great way. So how can we tell which fish is good and which fish is bad? Now, this is very difficult to do, particularly when you try and apply a top-down centralized system, as Primavera was talking about, the traditional way in which a technology to provide traceability works today. In theory, you need to try and conquer a whole market, which having a centralized authority broker all of the data about the whole fishing industry doesn't seem like a very good idea. Which is why having a blockchain can provide a solution to enable everyone to track products in a format that indeed can be shared and interoperable without it needing to be brokered by one centralized authority. So the kinds of questions we asked ourselves were, what if certifications could be tracked like Bitcoin? And what if those certifications could actually absorb data and ratings, almost like TripAdvisor? And what if we could create a reputation system so that, in fact, we could rate peer-to-peer inside supply chains, like something like Uber? So this is kind of the blueprint of the entire project that we did in fishing. And this involved working with an NGO on the ground at source, who had a very vigorous method for verifying the social sustainability of the fish being caught in a certain part of Indonesia. However, the big issue was, after these fish were caught and they were given their paper certificate, those fish were being multiplied times 100. It seemed, from this small area of Indonesia where it had very well vetted social sustainability claims, those fish were multiplying along the supply chain, so that by the time they reached the store, you were always almost at 100 times the number of fish that had been caught. So somehow along this very complex supply chain, there was some fibbing going on. So what we did is we worked with them on the ground in order to create a registration program for the fishermen that allowed them to store their key claims, their certifications, inside a blockchain in a digital format that couldn't be duplicated or copied, only transferred, in a similar way that to Bitcoin, not being able to be duplicated or copied, only transferred. So those key sustainability claims were stored and linked to the mass of fish that had been caught. And essentially what we allowed to happen is for that mass and the linked claims to be traded down the supply chain in a similar way to a Bitcoin transaction, all the way to end consumer. And in some of the parts of Indonesia where we tested this involved selling the fish with the digital certificate and transferring that almost 14 or 15 times before it hit a factory. So I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the testing we did in the UK, because as you can imagine, creating a digital fish that gets traded along with a physical fish is quite a crazy idea to most fishermen. So we decided to go down to Cornwall in the south of the UK and try this out first of all there, which was a pretty interesting process. We decided to try and convince people it was a bit like a Facebook for adding your products, but then when you sell your product to someone else, you have to add them as a friend and transfer the products to them. And this seemed to work quite well. So we registered, this is a fisherman joining Provenance in Cornwall. And then we created these little QR codes that enable people to claim a product when they'd bought it, or the alternative was the product could be also transferred, like with a SMS, to the next stage of the chain. So this meant that we were tagging boxes, and we tried many different tagging methods to try and link the digital and the physical. And it worked. So we managed to get, I think it was about a 5-step supply chain. We managed to convince fishermen in a harbour port in Cornwall to digitize their catch and track their claim, their proof of origin claim, all the way down the supply chain, with us kind of running along in parallel until they eventually arrived at a fish shop in London. So then it was time to take our prototype up a notch and apply it in the Indonesian fishing industry, where we see the disparity between sustainability and fishing is one of the greatest. So here we had 2 test cases. We were working on pollen line caught skipjack tuna, which is used in cans, and the other one was the hand line caught yellowfin, which is sashimi. So we did a registration program working with the NGOs. We found that we didn't want to have to impose new technologies onto the fishermen. So pretty much all of the fishermen had a pretty simple smartphone. So instead of demanding everyone got a smartphone, we linked to their mobile phone number to the blockchain, and allowed catch registrations to be done through SMS. So this meant every day the fishermen registered their catches to the blockchain with a simple text message that was linked to a profile that we'd registered them with the NGO. So this went on for a few days, and we managed to gather a lot of catches. And then as the fish got transferred down the chain, every supplier received the digital versions of the fish containing the verified certifications in order to cascade the claims down the chain. A huge catalyst for this was the factory, who said that they would pay a small premium for fish that came with digital traceability, because they knew that this fish was going to be traded in the US, where new legislation has come out to say that all fish entering the US towards the end of next year needs to come with full digital traceability. So rather than imposing a top-down system, they said they would include a tiny premium if people adopted a system like this. And actually, this has worked very, very well. So all in all, we managed to track from individual fishermen through SMS, transferring onto a smartphone interface further down the chain, essentially forming a natural, decentralized network, tracking these fish and their claims as they flow through the supply chain. So this meant that towards the end of the chain, you have a kind of a tree-style diagram that has formed behind the fish to see exactly where it came from. Of course, there are a few more intricacies here that I don't have huge amounts of time to go into. For example, things coming in and out of the factory. We worked to help ensure that a new system didn't need to be adopted, and we linked with existing systems. But I think all in all, we managed to track from the grassroots up thousands of fish working from this community, and ensured that the number of fish that were caught sustainably at one end equaled the number of fish that were sold at the other. So I've just got a couple of minutes left, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the learnings we had during that process and that we're now applying in the agriculture industry. I think one thing Primavera has talked about, but I think it's important to stress, is that this is a technology we could all get involved with. It's not, you don't need to be a computer science PhD or an expert in cryptography to start using this technology. And indeed, there are many, many people that are making it quite easy to start to build applications just like the one we did. However, there are quite a lot of different flavors of blockchain, and I think we're seeing the ecosystem emerge, and I think it's quite important to consider what kinds of blockchains you're using when you build your applications. Another big thing is about user interface. So although blockchains sound very interesting and exciting, how they actually appear to us is just a normal web page. It's just a fancy database, basically. So a huge challenge we have here, and we had experience during this pilot, was how to design this interface for trust. What does the future of the internet look like if data is running on a blockchain, or how do you know if it is or not? And a huge part of our work now is looking at how can we visualize this data and show that it has been tracked with this method to communicate to individuals along supply chains that this is a certificate that can be trusted. Let me put it shortly. Basically, a picture of a padlock is not enough. So the last piece is about thinking about the systems that can come off of a system like this. I think we demonstrated quite simply with our pilot in the fishing industry that we're tracking an existing verified certificate and helping it avoid being double spent down the chain. However, when we start to think about the verification of that certificate and how we can perhaps introduce reputation systems to a network like this, what kind of effect this could have on our food industry, on what we understand about our products. It could be absolutely enormous, and I think we're starting to see the beginnings of some of these things becoming linked together. For example, sensors joining a blockchain to be able to tell if a product is indeed organic. So my last thing to say is to join us, to do reach out if you have questions or would like to find out more information about what we're doing. Because we are dedicated to transparency, we tend to be quite transparent ourselves, and indeed all our work in the fishing industry is all fully documented online. We also have quite a few code libraries that are open and people are welcome to use. So yeah, don't be a stranger. This is right at the beginning of building this technology in the food industry, and we invite you all to work with us together. Thank you.